Hey boys and girls, Tim McCamus here in the shop again tonight, and I'm going to talk to you about front end stagger. Okay, so you might have heard your buddies talk about this, or you might have seen it in some of the rule books, or might have came up on some message boards or something. I'm going to talk to you about what stagger is and what it is and is not used for. So stagger in the front axle would be the difference between the right and left side in wheelbase. Okay, so a car with a chassis set up with no stagger, let's say this is a 112-inch wheelbase car, I'm going to be 112 inches on the right side and 112 inches on the left side. All right, so my front wheels, this wheel is going to be in line left to right. They'll be straight across from each other. So that's going to be zero stagger. If I put stagger in it, so let's say somebody says, oh, I got an inch of stagger in this car. What that's going to mean is that the front tires are offset. Okay, so if you're looking at the front tires, no stagger, stagger is like this. You're going to offset them. The rules are covered in almost every class, especially in the quicker cars. 2 inches is the maximum amount of stagger. If I'm going to take that stagger to the absolute farthest that the rule book will let me, I'm going to put this left front wheel 2 inches ahead of the right front wheel. Okay, so and you might say, okay, why do I need stagger, or what would it be good for? All right, so it's basically made to cheat the electronics at the racetrack. Okay, and that's all it's for. That's what. So it's going to give you. So just like anything else, when you take advantage in one area, you usually lose it in another area. So no stagger, you're going to roll in, turn the top light on in pre-stage. You're going to roll in just a little bit farther, and you're going to turn on the bottom light and you're staged, all right? So you got both lights on, you got both beams are broken. When the car leaves and the beams connect again, that's what starts the clocks for your run. It's going to calculate your reaction time, and it's going to start the clocks to give you a time at the other end. So if I stagger my front wheel and tire package, so if I offset it, let's say I offset it that full 2 inches, the chassis is going to be able to move farther ahead, basically shortening up the racetrack before you break the beams. So no stagger in a car, you're going to get a quicker reacting car, a quicker reacting time for the car to leave, but you won't be able to take advantage of it. So the beams are going to break as soon as the car moves. So when you take the two wheel and tires and you offset them, so if they're in line, the both circles line up, but if you offset them, you're going to make them look like an 8. So you're going to basically have an oblong looking front tire. If you're the beam, if you're looking across, you're going to have an oblong tire that's going to give your car a head start before it breaks and starts the clock. And you might think, oh, well, that's not too much, it's only 2 inches, but it does make a difference. When we're talking about thousandths of a second, it does make a difference. The downside to it is your reaction time is going to slow down, because you're going to start the beam, you're going to break that beam later. So even though you're reacting on time, your time to react on the slip is going to be slower than it is if you have no stagger. So if you were able to run the car with no stagger in it and watch your reaction time, and then change the car at the track and add 2 inches of stagger to it, if you left the car exactly the same way you did, your reaction time would be slower, your ET would be quicker, because you're taking a little bit of advantage of the starting line clocks to get it started later. Okay, so that's why we put stagger in. And so if we're doing a fast car, like if we're doing a pro modified car, whether it's supercharged, nitrous, whatever, we want to take full advantage of that. So we will always stagger the front axle. If it's a top sportsman car and they're really hardcore bracket racing, they're really good top sportsman guys, almost all the time they'll want no stagger, because they're going to want that car consistent, and they're going to want it their reaction times to be dead on every time and quick as possible. So those guys are going to want to be 00 on the tree, and they're going to want to be they're not going to be as concerned as their number as they are if they're racing heads up. So A lot of advantage to it, disadvantages the same way. So it really depends what you want to do. Now, if you're building a car for, let's say you're building a Pro Mod car that's going to run NHRA, where they're really good about teching the cars, you got to watch that 2 inches, because 2 inches is the maximum difference front to back. So a lot of times we will only take an 1.5 inch advantage, because like lining up the front end, getting the caster set right and all that, you want to have a little bit of wiggle room there so you don't go over that 2 inches, because if they measure that thing and it's more than 2 inches stagger, you're out and you're not running. So you have to fix it. It cannot be more than 2 inches. So you need to keep that in mind if you're going to cheat that advantage to the maximum. You got to really watch it when you finish the car and line up the front end, because you can't be over that 2 inches of stagger. So that's what the guys are talking about when they say that, and that's what the advantages are to it. So stagger in the front end will not affect how the car handles. The chassis basically doesn't know. So if you've got the caster and the camber set right and the toe in, so we want to have about an 1/8 inch toe in on this, the chassis will absolutely not know if the left front tire is ahead of the right front tire. It will not drive any differently. It will not handle any differently. It will not try to steer one way or the other. It will still go straight, even though it's got that 2 inches of stagger in it. You know, a lot of times guys will, this is one of the things with stagger that some of our customers would do, is so during qualifying they might just, they'll roll in with a car with stagger and they'll barely flicker that stage bulb. So that means they're in really shallow. Okay, so that's a shallow stage where you're just in, where that light just flickered. So that's going to give you the most advantage. But then in eliminations, but their reaction is going to be the slowest that way. In eliminations, they would roll in deep. So if you roll in deep and roll in farther, because now you can move a lot farther. Once you turn that stage light on, you could see this car roll a lot farther before it would ever turn that pre-stage light off, because of the stagger in the front end. That will give them a better reaction time, but their numbers are going to be off. Their ET number is going to be off from what they did in qualifying, because now they're bumped in deep and their reaction time may be quicker, but their ET is going to be slower. So hopefully I didn't confuse you on that, but that's the basics of stagger in the front end. So if you guys have any questions, let us know. We'll be glad to help you out.